Good evening. We want to welcome our viewers of the Johnson City Government Information Channel on Charter Cable Channel 192 and Comcast Cable Channel, that is, Channel 17, to this live telecast of the January 9th, 2018 Johnson City Regional Planning Commission meeting. This meeting will be rebroadcast again on Friday, January 12th, 2018 at 12 p.m. noon. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Commissioner Cooper will start us off with our invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, first of all, thank you for the sun that you sent down during this season. Help us to carry the spirit of this season throughout the year and arrive at this time next year more happy, more comfortable, and more loving of each other. Thank you also for the military that are scattered throughout the world, protecting the freedom that we all enjoy. Give each of us here tonight the wisdom and compassion to share our opinions thoughtfully and fairly, and for this body to make wise decisions. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. First item, or the next item on the agenda will be actually the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, the agenda is approved. Next, we will talk about the approval of minutes from the December 12th meeting. Have a motion to approve minutes?
So moved.
So move. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. No unfinished business. We will go ahead and launch into new business. First, we'll be considering a Washington County rezoning at 160 Hales Road.
Yes, sir, that is correct. Currently, the property you see here is owned planned business. The request is to turn 31 acres of vacant property lying 1,300 feet the intersection of Hills Church Road and Boones Creek Road into general agriculture. The reason for this request is to support a mini farm and to allow the building of a single-family home on the property. The surrounding zoning is a mix of general agriculture and planned business. The predominant land use is agricultural and single-family residential. Both Washington County Planning and City of Johnson City Planning recommend approval of the rezoning from PB to A1 for 160 Hales Road.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for staff regarding the rezoning? No? Thank you. Do we have anybody here wishing to speak for, against, or comment on the matter at hand? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open up discussion on the commission. And looking for...
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos?
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Zions?
Yes. Thank you. I assume that passed unanimously.
Oh, yes, sorry.
No worries. Next, we're going to go ahead and item number 2 will be rezoning of the property located at 2721 East Oakland Avenue. Mr. Manley.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. We do have a request here for our 3.46 acres to be rezoned from light industrial to RO1, which is high density residential professional office district. The petitioner is requesting or is proposed 5,400 square feet of dental office, 4,600 square feet of medical lease space, and 22 bedroom apartments as part of their concept plan. There is RO1 in the surrounding area just across the street, and the land use plan has this marked as an industrial area on the map. However, there are objectives and policies in the land use plan itself, which support rezoning of vacant land to commercial or industrial uses, to rezoning of vacant land to or from commercial and industrial uses based on market demand, transportation impact, access, and compatibility with surrounding land uses in conjunction with long-range objectives. And so as we look at how this area is zoned currently and at the land uses, you see that there are some commercial properties in the corridors as well as some residential office. And we also have two nearby properties that have submitted letters of support for this rezoning and stating that they would also be interested in a rezoning along this corridor. Also in line with the kind of the current nature of this area, there are bike lanes along this collector, and again, that shows that there's an opportunity here to allow residents who can access shopping opportunities, churches, jobs, using multimodal transportation. There's also industrial land use zone behind this property. Currently, it's used as a nursery, which is a commercial use. However, if an industry was to come in and redevelop that site, they would not need to go through a rezoning if they were going to use it for light industrial. However, they would have to buffer from the residential uses should this change over to RO1. And so there would be a 40-foot setback for the side and rear yards, as well as a buffer requirement for landscaping, which could either be a fence or some type of type 1 evergreen trees. So overall, with the kind of changing of the character along this corridor, and as well as some other examples in the land use plan where you do see kind of commercial strips that are on the frontage of the road and buffer industrial uses that are further back off the road. I believe that you're seeing that type of development occur here, where we have industrial that is tucked in behind on Wesley Court, access from Wesley Court, as well as along Princeton Road, and that Princeton Road provides greater access to the interstate, which is necessary for industrial uses, and that this corridor it looks like it's coming more of a mixed-use type of district. So we would recommend approval of the rezoning, as stated in the staff report.
All right, we're going to open for questions for staff.
I have a question for you, Matt. Can you go back maybe 2 slides? Oh, that one is fine. I'll look to the right side of that, and I see the strip of green, and then I see the space behind it. Is that part of this property, or is that?
That space is a 25-foot natural gas easement. And so that is another kind of factor here. The concept plan shows a berm going along their portion of that 25-foot easement, and that's stated on the concept plan as well, because you can't have trees planted over the easement. And so half of that is on this property, half of that would be on what is the Evergreen Nursery property currently. In this case, it would be built to the south.
So if Evergreen were ever sold and industrial was wanting to come in and develop as industrial, as it's currently zoned, does that mean it's going to require even more of a 15-foot loss of their property, basically, for having to put up a buffer?
Well, because there is actually the buffer requirement in the I-1 zoning code requires 40 feet from the side. So it somewhat depends on their orientation. And maybe we can get a look at that. And so at the front of the property is facing Princeton Road. That would be a side yard. Side yard setback is 40 feet. So I think that 40-foot buffer would encompass the rest of that 25-foot easement as well as the 15-foot requirement. It's over and above what would be necessary. So they're already required to be 40 feet from residential.
Okay, so it's not going to change the amount of available space that the current industrial would be able to use for their own development?
They would not-
By rezoning this?
They would not have as wide of a setback if residential was not there. So currently, it's single-family use, but it is zoned I-1. And so by changing this, this will affect some of the usable space for a future light industrial use on the property behind it.
Matt, do you happen to know the B4 and the B1, were they at one time industrial also?
I'm not sure about the corner lot. There's a building supply place there, and because of the warehouse, that fits within the light industrial use. And there is some manufacturing along here as well.
But now, what I'm really asking is, were those two, have those two pieces been rezoned at some point from industrial to, was it B1 and B4?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the historic nature of the zoning here. If it's either never got caught up with the previous land use plan, or if it's already kind of set some precedent to go away from the land use plan. Not sure about that. In fact,
That's fine.
there is part of that B4 is vacant, and that's actually more of the frontage. You can see that the part that is developed is actually set back off the road, and so
Is that that small brick building? Is that?
it's a pretty large building. The
No,
building's
I'm in the wrong spot. I'm sorry.
Large storage.
where it says building supply right here, and then you see the gray
Oh,
square in front of
right.
it.
Okay.
And so you've got some vacant property there that that I think really is a good example of what we're looking at here, where really just the frontage along that corridor is really conducive to commercial and maybe medium density residential. And then just behind that, it makes sense for that to stay, buffered but intact industrial area that's accessed from Wesley Street, Wesley Court, Princeton Road. And so that vacant parcel actually, falls in line with kind of the way that this corridor is showing itself and developing in the future.
We have another question here.
Matt, if you could go back one slide to where it shows all the R values. As I look at this particular area, it looks like it's going under some transition, and most recently, the cases that we've looked at have been the R01 land uses that we've changed over the last 6 years that I've been on the board. So I think by changing this parcel would be in order of what we've done in the recent past.
There's obviously a trend moving here. Matt, I'm going to ask a direct question, and given the most basic question we can ask, that is that the proposed use for this property is in line with the requested zoning, is that correct?
That is correct.
Very good.
Why would you ask that?
Any more questions for staff? No, all right. Thank you. And at this point, do we have anybody here wishing to speak for or against or comment on this project and the rezoning request?
Greg Cox, 6 Llewellyn Wood. I'm here to speak for it, just here to answer any questions you guys might have, talk about the project a little bit. The architects with us also, as well as the builder and the potential buyer. One thing I will state with that natural gas easement in the back, that really is a good natural break for industrial to kind of a lesser zoning. You can't combine the property and ever build on top of that. So, it really is a 50-foot break that really divides two separate spaces. So, if you have any questions, just want to be able to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Any questions? No? Do we have anybody else wishing to speak? I don't see anybody coming. Thank you all for being here. We'll go ahead and close the public comment on it and go ahead and look for discussion and motions. One thing I would say from the chair is that this looks like an area that's really in transition. It's probably a little different from our other industrial corridor, and we don't have a lot of industrial land in Johnson City, but this really is an area in transition, and along that East Oakland corridor, it looks like that's an arterial collector that's going to have more of a business face to it than it does right now, per se. and that this is, although it's not necessarily what the land use plan says, this is, I would not necessarily consider this spot zoning, but the natural evolution of this part of the community. Looking for any motions or discussion?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos?
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Zayons?
Yes.
Motion passes
Okay.
8-0.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we'll go to the reconsidering the rezoning along People Street.
This is a rezoning request which the Planning Commission had earlier considered. The Planning Commission approved this rezoning or the use that was proposed on this particular piece of property for Dominion Independent Living Facility. At that time, staff had considered it to be a multi-family apartment. However, after the City Commission approved it on first reading, upon further review and with further information obtained from the applicant, staff determined that this is really a residential home for the aged or an assisted living facility because of other customary services that will be provided on site, such as ordinary health care that is provided on these kind of facilities. The property adjoins People's Street. It's currently one large piece of property over 14 acres. Even part of the lot across this part of this property extends across the road. This is all one parcel. But the developer only intends to acquire and to develop these 3.3 acres. The screen is a concept plan for this particular project. It has not changed from what the Planning Commission reviewed last time, except one thing that has been added on the concept plan, namely the 15 feet wide landscape buffer area. The zoning ordinance requires that the concept plan should show landscape areas when they are buffer areas when they are required. Staff has reviewed this particular request, changing it from planned business to R4, medium density residential. Last time it was considered from planned business to RP5. This time we're considering it from planned business to R4, medium density residential. In terms of the land use map of the city at this particular moment, the zoning map of the city at this particular time, this piece of property adjoins an R4 district, which currently has a multi-family apartment on it. That apartment has 24.54 bedrooms per acres in terms of density. This developer is proposing 80 dwelling units, 80 units, on a 3.3 acre piece of property that will give a density of 26.77 bedrooms per acre, comparatively the same as the density on the adjoining R4 district. This will not be spot zoning because all we'll really be doing is simply extending the existing R4 district adjoining Sharon Drive further downward on this piece of property. So this will not be spot zoning. The piece of property adjoins People Street. People Street is a collector street. It is designed to carry density more than half what we would normally have for single-family residential area. So engineering has not determined that the density being proposed here will have any significant effect on People Street to warrant any kind of improvements to take care of this particular project. There are already utilities available in this particular area. The developer will be extending those utilities to his property. There will not be any cost to the city associated with developing this piece of property. The proposed use will contribute to satisfying a demand for residential homes for the aged, which is increasing in the city because Johnson City's population is aging. There is an increase in the aging population of the city. In 2000, we had 25.1% of the city was made up of persons 55 years or above. In 2010, that increased to 30%, and in 2020, it is projected to increase to 34.9%. So this is a project that has a market demand within the city. Staff heard the neighborhood meeting on January 3rd. 3 persons were present at the meeting. There was no opposition to it. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod. Do we have any questions for staff?
Can I just
Mr.
ask,
Miller.
the landscape buffer, why is it specifically on that area? And not on the area, I don't know where south and north is, at the bottom, so of that, yeah. Why is there not a buffer there?
Undeveloped land.
Question, I need to go to on this map. The zoning ordinance of the city has requirements for buffer areas based not on the use on an adjoining property, but on the zone. So you can have, let's take the situation we're looking at not long ago, the previous item we considered on East Oakland. You have a single-family residential property on an I-1 zone. If the adjoining property is also I-1 and the developer is developing there on that I-1 property, per our zoning requirement, we will not require a buffer because it's really based on the zone, not on the use. If the zone is all the same, if the adjoining zone is the same, then you don't have any requirement for a buffer. But if the adjoining zone is different and there is an impact, there's a matrix in the zoning code, then a buffer requirement sets in. Based on that, this is the site proposed for development. On the southwest side of the property, it is zone R2. So that is minimum impact. It requires a type 1 buffer. Further on this other side, south of the property, it's zone R3. So you have an R4 piece of property adjoining an R3 piece of property. That also requires a type 1 buffer. But on this side of the property, there is no requirement for a buffer precisely because the PB district is higher in classification in terms of the zoning impact than the R4, which the city is the planning commission is considering. If in future some other developer comes to develop this PB district, that developer will be required to create a buffer. So if he comes to develop this PB district for a business, let's say a grocery store, just an example, on the PB district, then he will be required to create a buffer. So the person who is developing on the zone, which is higher in the classification, it is that person who is required to create a buffer.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? Nope. Thank you. We'll go ahead and open up public comment regarding speaking for or against this rezoning on People Street. Anybody here wishing to speak for or against? Not seeing any. We'll go ahead and close public comment and open up this discussion. Ready for motions?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos?
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Zions?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And to the petitioner, thank you for bearing with us. We're sorry for the delay on this and us not catching it at the last time with the PB. But it looks like everybody's done everything they can to heal the situation. I'm glad it's going to work out. So we'll pass it on to the commission. Next, we're here to discuss the Isaacs annexation.
Yes, this is a follow-up to the Isaacs annexation that this board approved unanimously on October 10th, 2017. If you'll remember, that was a 14-acre tract of property zoned R2A. At that time, construction plans had not been complete for this site, and once construction plans were submitted, it was determined that there is an 874 square foot area that is pertinent to the stormwater retention system that currently lies in the county. Per our subdivision regulations, all stormwater management technologies shall be in the city in order to ensure that we can maintain them and don't have to go to the county to ask for access. For that reason, we are bringing this before you. We do recommend approval of the 874 square feet to be annexed into the city.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Young, any questions? Nope. Thank you. Anybody here wishing to speak for or against the annexation? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment on that as well. And looking for motions.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos?
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Zayons?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Move to the Royston annexation, sir.
Yes, this annexation request is for 1388 Core Lane. This is a .73 acre parcel, and this is a single-family home which is surrounded on two sides, bordered on two sides by the existing city limits. The requested city zoning is RP2, which is also the neighboring zoning. This annexation request was presented to our local agencies that provide services, and we did not hear any concerns from those folks. We did run the numbers on the financial impact, and you will see that the revenues to the general fund would be $1,254, and the expenses would be $4,386. Those expenses are based on the applicant's 3 school-age children that would be attending city schools. And that's really kind of the impetus for this annexation request, is to maintain the children's attendance at the city schools. So there is a deficit there recurring under this current scenario. But in spite of that, staff recommends approval as presented in the staff report.
Mr. Manley, normally whenever you do a financial analysis, if we didn't know the occupants, just looking at annexations, is it my understanding that they usually consider 0.3 children per home, single-family resident? Is that how you do the financial analysis?
The numbers come from a source. Matt, do you know the answer on that?
Normally, in the instance, if we were to annex a piece of property, say for a subdivision, and we saw that they're proposing 24 home sites, we would multiply 24 times 0.3 to get the number of estimated school-age children. And that's what we'd be looking, that's how we normally
So
estimate.
a general
However, this, we do
estimate.
have some hard numbers for, and we do know
Right.
that are 3, bucking the trend.
Very good.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question there.
Very good. Very good. My point being with the question, just to demonstrate that occupancy of a particular house can be somewhat fluid. So if we were to kind of look at how we generally guesstimate a larger population, maybe that should be taken into account when considering the financial analysis of that particular home. It's nice to have the hard numbers for that particular home, but ultimately it functions as a part of the city regardless of who owns it.
Absolutely.
So,
Good point.
any further questions for staff?
I will point out that if this was a new home, there would have to be there's a pavement, which is considered their parking, which is concrete pavement, and then gravel driveway connecting to the right-of-way. And so they would have to be the same surface, whether gravel or paved, if this was new construction. But since it's already constructed, it's grandfathered in.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead and open up public comment. Anybody wishing to speak for or against this annexation?
Move we approve.
Hello, I'm the owner of the home. I just want to say I'm for the annexation.
Can you give us your, and I guess you're Mr. Royston, is that right? And you live at this house, this is your.
So,
That's right.
Are your kids near graduation, so we don't worry about that deficit?
probably don't need to go into that issue. I wish they were a little closer sometimes, but no, I appreciate you taking time and just appreciate the attention. The sooner the better.
Thank you very much.
Could you
Okay.
move 2.7 of those children out of the home?
27?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't,
We can have a special tax
Yes.
increase for
Can't
your
divide 'em.
residents
Yeah.
only. We can.
gotcha. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate you. Anybody else wishing to speak regarding this matter? No, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open up discussion on the commission.
Given that this piece of property is adjacent to our current boundaries, I feel like it's very appropriate for annexation,
Okay, we have a motion to
despite
approve.
the excessive 2.7 children.
And we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos?
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
Chairman Ziones?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. So moving on to our next item on the agenda, which is going to be to consider an amendment to Article 6 in the historic, historic conservation overlay district. What we need to do is to consider these as individual options and vote on it, and then create our own if we deny the others. So let's start with the one presented to us by the city commission in their request.
All right, we'll call that option 1.
We'll call
How
that
about
option one.
All right.
And we're going to discuss it and vote it up or down on its merits.
Can you read it first so everyone knows what we're talking about? I got you, didn't I, Matt?
Sorry. So presently, there is a vacancy on the Historic Zoning Commission, and in an effort to fill that vacancy, it was realized that there is a 3-year length of residency requirement within the city before you can be considered to be on the Historic Zoning Commission. There has been a recommendation proposed by the City Commission to strike that length of residency requirement to make it a simple residency. The provision would read in Section 6.26.4 under creation of Historic Zoning Commission. A Historic Zoning Commission is hereby created for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, consisting of 7 members who shall be residents of the City of Johnson City and who shall continue to be so, eligible as long as they serve. This was recommended by the City Commission. This was presented at the December 19th Historic Zoning Commission, and staff asked the Historic Zoning Commission to endorse or make their own recommendation. And we do have the chairman of Historic Zoning Commission, Mr. Hal Hunter, with us this evening. They did not want to completely strike the length of residency requirement as a compromise. They proposed allowing someone to, reducing that length of residency requirement to 1 year, or allowing someone on the commission be eligible to be appointed who has expertise in historic preservation or planning. That option reads, a Historic Zoning Commission is hereby created for the City of Johnson City, consisting of 7 members who shall either exhibit expertise in historic preservation or planning, or who have been residents of Johnson City for 1 year immediately prior to the appointment, and who shall continue to be so eligible as long as they serve.
We'll call that option number 2.
Number 2, yes.
All right. So I think in framing this for our deliberation, we need to be careful. We either approve 1 or 2, or deny 1, deny 2, and come up with a third option, or do nothing tonight, which is a perfectly fine option as well.
Correct.
So thank you for presenting both options. I'm going to go ahead and, I don't believe there's any requirement. Is Mr. Stahl outside for public comment on this? Is there text amendments?
I would actually like to hear some public comment.
Okay, I
Just
didn't-
based on what's the difference between and/or 1 year.
Understand. Well, in that case, fine, we'll deliberate it that way. Any other questions for staff right now? No. Okay. So let's go ahead and open up anybody wishing to speak for option 1 or 2. Are there merits, demerits, considerations?
Thank you. My name is Hal Hunter, I'm currently chairman of the Historic Zoning Commission. When this was brought to us by
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
Matt on our December meeting, and Ms. Sandos was not present at that meeting. You were otherwise engaged, as I recall. But other than her, it was the other 6 of the members were there. Our reaction was surprise that any commission does not have, that all commissions do not have some kind of basic residential requirement. Whether you, I mean, as it is now, you could be here, move into the city, Go down, pick up an application, get a petition signed, and run for city commission, and never have lived in Johnson City at all. The same thing is true with your commission and all, and we just felt that is not right. People need to have some experience in the city. We looked at this, we talked about it, we decided that the current proposal we made was kind of a good compromise, because you do have people, we currently have an applicant for the open position who has lived in historic districts in Richmond and in Augusta, Georgia, who's been very involved, he's very engaged, and I think would be a great commissioner. But he's only lived in the city for 18 months. So therefore, they were throwing him out. And that was basically what drove our particular recommendation to put some kind of restriction on it, but not just throw it wide open on this. So,
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Sure.
First of all, thank you for your service on the Historical Commission. We really appreciate it. Secondly, as you're looking at candidates and qualified candidates, who's doing the vetting process? Do you start the vetting process, your commission, and then
that is
send-
handled by the staff.
It's all handled by the
Yeah,
staff?
the application does require that they, I believe, where'd Matt go?
I bet for honestly, I receive the applications as long as they come in within the 30-day open window that we have. I check to make sure that they have lived here for 3 years, and once that happens, I send it on to City Commission. It starts out as an information item for City Commission, and then at the second meeting, it's appointed by the mayor.
Okay, so by adding the and/or, if I have these expert qualifications, expertise in historical preservation and/or planning, then we can void the 1 year, or is that and the 1 year?
It was our it was our
And I'm talking about the second
intent that
our
motion.
intent to say and or so say you could be here for 3 months, but if you've, like you said, served in Augusta or Charleston or someplace like that.
So
and you do have
I guess my
expertise.
point is, if there's a vetting program available, why do we need the time frame? If you're looking at if you're vetting someone that says, I have these qualifications, why do we need a time?
Because in option 2, if you have the appropriate qualifications, you could still get on the commission if you've been here for 2 weeks.
Right.
In
But we
other-
do have
Hopefully,
people,
looking at people who have the proper,
Well, that's the only difference between that and the first one.
it is the only difference.
The question would be, if you have somebody that, say the applicant, there's an open position right now, and the person that has applied has lived here for 3 years, but has absolutely no experience with anything else. Just because you have an open position and an applicant doesn't mean that you automatically place the applicant into open position. There is still other vetting that does take place.
right, and the application does ask for their input into things as to what they may have done, what their interest is, why they want to serve on the commission. And I think in the case of, this fellow's been here for 18 months, but he's done JC 101 already. He's very involved with some other elements of historic preservation. He does live in the South Side neighborhood, but he is not in the historic district. And so but, having talked with him and he's got some knowledge, he's got an interest in it, and we have one gentleman on the commission right now who was appointed last year, who's very engaged, but he really has no background in it. He just was looking for something, and he thought this was an interest he has. He's interested in history, but, he lived in the city for I don't know how long, quite a while, and, that's fine. There are very few people like myself who are running around Johnson City with degrees in architectural history or preservation, but there are some of us.
How is there not a way to take advantage of this gentleman that you've identified in the interim while he does qualify for the 3 years?
Not the way the ordinance is written at this point, I don't believe.
Really?
And,
You can't
historic zoning.
have coffee with him?
Oh, I can have coffee with him, yeah. Or, frequently a beer or whatever.
So he can't attend a meeting?
Oh, yeah, he can attend the meetings.
Can he speak up?
As
Can he
a
offer an
resident.
opinion?
Sure, anybody can. I mean, historic zoning operates like you do. Everything we do is a public hearing.
So what's the real problem with, other than the timeframe?
From what I understand, the other people that we've got qualified, basically, or have applied, what, are they qualified, do you think, Matt? Or do you have any idea?
Okay, so
I mean,
it's,
from what you've inferred to me, I mean, the one person filled in his address and said he'd been to JC 101, end of story. To me, that's not.
but doesn't that speak to the
demonstrating
vetting process of the applicant?
qualification. Well,
And that goes to my question, is just because there is an applicant that meets the qualifications, does that automatically mean that they fill the vacant spot? Can you
Well-
remain open until there is a more highly qualified candidate?
And it ultimately lands on the mayor, who's making the appointment.
Right.
Who has to, in my experience, you either know this person is particularly qualified, sit down, have a discussion with them, and they're personally responsible for the vetting. Now, they may delegate some of that to Mr. Young or anyone else, but ultimately, they're responsible for that vetting when they make that appointment, correct? I mean,
My current vetting rubric is, have you lived here 3 years? Check. I'm moving on
Gotcha.
to city commission.
yeah.
So you're not checking if
He's
they
not-
lived in downtown Williamsburg for 10 years?
You don't
or
at least have a
Right.
20-point questionnaire on historic architecture? You don't have?
the only way you would know something like that would be if they actually included it in the paragraph as to what they thought their qualifications were.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions for staff? Or for Mr.?
I guess, have you read option 1 yet, sir?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that was what was presented to us on the 19th.
So, how is that, other than the and/or 1 year, aren't these statements very similar?
There's,
I mean, it gives a way to vet. I mean,
Option
you just
one-
add a second form of vetting.
option
I guess.
1 says nothing about what a person's qualifications might be.
And neither does 3 years, I might add. Just because you've lived here for 3 years.
Well,
doesn't
not
mean- There's a lot of
necessarily.
people, live here- you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people
Oh,
who
yeah.
lived in the town for 3 years, and it doesn't make
Right.
them qualified. So somebody has to be responsible for vetting them to make sure that they would
Yeah.
perform
But
well
if
on
they've
that
been here for
board.
3 years, at least they've kind of got a sense of the community, I would think. I mean, if they're looking at being involved in a city commission, I would hope they've been somewhat engaged in activities in the community enough to know some of the things that are going on.
Fair enough.
Minimal requirement, John.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Hunter? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close public comment at this point then, and we need to go ahead and individually, I think, consider each of these options as Mr. Epps had recommended. We have option number 1 as it was presented to us.
You want a motion on each option then?
Yes, we need a motion on number 1 first.
Okay, I'll move that we accept the option number 1 as presented.
A motion to accept, and then we can have a second or further discussion.
I'll go on record saying I plan to oppose my own motion, but I'm making it so that we can go through the,
In
that light, I'll
second Stacy's motion.
yeah.
Well, I just personally think that it's, without some feel for this community, any community, I think putting somebody on a historic commission is even, maybe more risky than putting it on a commission like ours.
I agree.
So, are you sure you want to make the option to approve? Why not just, I'm sorry, this doesn't make
Just deny
sense.
it.
Just deny it.
Well, I thought we could all vote no.
Well, we can all vote yes.
Then
Yeah,
we
we
would have
don't
to
get to vote no
then we would
very
have to
often.
start all over again. So we're going to have a motion to deny it, is that correct?
Okay,
Let's do-
I move that we deny option 1.
And we have a second. Okay, will you please call the roll? then?
Okay. And this is a vote on a motion to deny option 1.
So a yes is a no vote.
A yes says this goes
Yes.
away.
Yes.
All year.
Yes, okay. Commissioner Lowe?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Harrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Pavlich?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos?
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
And Chairman Zions?
Yes.
The
so
motion
option
to
number 1.
deny has been passed.
Primarily on the consideration, I'm understanding that somebody should have at least some expertise or minimal time here in the city, which brings us to option number 2. Now, we can either not option number 2 as it's written, or we can reject it, and then we can present a third option, or just go home.
Can I vote? Can I move that we accept option 2?
I have a motion for-
But again, I'm going to vote no. I just want to move to approve.
Okay. I'm going to let you do what you want to this time. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second to approve?
I'll second.
We have a second, motion second, please call the roll then.
Hold on. Okay.
This is to approve. If you say yes, we pass this on to city commission.
Okay, motion to approve option 2 and move on to city commission. Okay. Commissioner Lowe.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Harrell.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper.
No.
Commissioner Clark.
No.
Commissioner Pavlich.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos.
Yes.
Commissioner Wild.
No.
And Chairman Zions.
Yes.
All right, so the motion to approve option 2 has passed.
So
So there is no option 3 now.
there's no option 3. I think we're done. Thank you, Mr. Hunter. We appreciate you being here. I think in the end, it accomplishes what we want. It's maybe not pretty, but it works. All right, thank you. We're going to go on to item number 7 on the agenda was to be considering an amendment to the subdivision text, sections 3.3 to 2. However, we do not have the 30 days planned notice on this beforehand. Is that correct?
Yes, this is basically a staff request that the Planning Commission schedule a public hearing for this amendment for next month Planning Commission. That will be February 13. We need to provide a 30 days public notice before we can have this public hearing. But it needs to be in the records of the Planning Commission that this has been tabled for hearing
And this
within these 30 days.
issue that will be considered concerns items required for a minor subdivision and construction plan checklist. Is that correct?
Yes, we will be eliminating the requirement for stormwater management plan for minor subdivisions. And secondly, we will be adding a requirement that in construction plans for subdivision, the 100-year flood flow path should be shown on the plans.
So these are the two amendments we're going to consider, but not tonight. We need to table it in order to have a public hearing.
Yes,
Do
sir.
we need a motion
Okay,
to table?
we need a motion to table.
So moved.
So moved, we have a second.
Second.
We have several seconds. Mr. Liu was the first one.
Yes,
Second,
thanks.
please call the roll.
Okay, motion to table. Commissioner Lowe.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrell.
I think we
Commissioner
can-
Cooper.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark. Yes. Commissioner Pavlich.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandos.
Yes.
Commissioner Wild.
Yes.
And Chairman Zions.
Yes.
Motion passed.
And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. I thought you adjourned us on the last one.
Could you move that we deny?
You're making my head.
We deny Bob the ability to adjourn.
All right, very good. You going home? Yeah. All right, thanks for being here.
Thanks, man. Hey, you got something?
Thank you, too. I just like the clean motions to approve, and then you can just vote yes or no. But it makes it simpler than moving to deny and then voting yes. To me, it makes more sense.
Motion seems positive.
It's not positive.